It's Christmas Day,
Mhm.
and while lots of folks are out there, celebrating with family, we're actually going to be diving into a pretty heavy topic.
Yeah, definitely a bit somber for the holidays.
Two missing children cases,
Mhm.
Hassani Campbell and Tiana Kchner.
Right.
We're looking at a recent episode of the Crime Junkie podcast, and I guess what we're really trying to do today is look at the facts of these cases, but also, what went wrong.
Yeah, I think that's key, right? I mean, especially on a day like this, looking at these stories, it's hard not to think, what could we have done differently?
Absolutely, to help protect these kids. Yeah. So Hassani Campbell, this goes back to 2009, Oakland, California.
Right.
5-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Had cerebral palsy.
Right.
And he vanishes
From a car.
while his foster father, Lewis Ross, is inside a shoe store.
Yeah. And that's where things get a little murky right from the start. I mean, there was a huge search effort, but right away there were questions about Lewis's story. Like inconsistencies about Hassani's leg braces, whether he had them on or not. It raised red flags for investigators right away.
And then, you get the media involved. You got Nancy Grace covering it. It becomes this big national story.
Oh, yeah. The media frenzy definitely took things to another level.
People start looking at Lewis's actions, He was seen at a junkyard. There was a failed polygraph. And then there was this text message he sent talking about, maybe leaving Hassani on public transportation.
Right, which of course immediately made everyone suspicious.
And then both Lewis and his fiancée, Jennifer, they get arrested, right?
Yeah, on suspicion of murder, but...
Suspicion of murder, but they were released.
Right. No charges, not enough hard evidence.
And it's like, what happens then?
Well, that's when you see the community really step up.
Yeah.
This woman, Sherlyn Miller, she just took charge, organizing all these volunteer searches, following up on leads, even some tips from psychics.
Incredible effort.
Really shows how much people care. But sadly, Hassani is still missing.
Still missing. And
it's
so frustrating. The police still say they think Lewis is responsible, but
no charges. It makes you wonder what's missing, what's preventing them from getting that resolution.
Yeah, what more do they need? Okay, so let's talk about Tiana Kchner now. This is a whole other story, right? 2016, this time in Woodinville, Washington.
Different state, different circumstances.
9-year-old girl. But what's really strange is her disappearance wasn't reported right away. It was 4 years later, a relative comes forward and says, oh, she actually died years ago, and she's buried under a trailer.
Chilling, right?
And here's the crazy part. CPS, Child Protective Services, they'd actually been trying to find Tiana for years.
For years, and they couldn't locate her.
How does that even happen? A huge failure somewhere, obviously.
Yeah, it's a massive red flag about the system, right?
Absolutely.
A kid slipping through the cracks like that, and then, of course, they search the trailer.
And they find her.
Encased in concrete.
It's just awful. And then her siblings come forward, and they start describing this horrific abuse from Tiana's mother, Tricia, and her stepfather, Jordan.
Terrible stories.
One of them even talked about Tiana getting hurt in the bathtub, a head injury, and then she just disappeared after that.
Awful.
And with all this, right, the authorities, they only say Tricia and Jordan were negligent, not abusive.
Right, just negligent, no arrests.
No arrests. It just doesn't feel right.
Well, you have to wonder, were there legal reasons? What were the specifics of the Washington state law? Maybe the evidence just wasn't enough to meet their definition of abuse.
It's like the law sometimes doesn't make sense with what feels right,
Yeah, absolutely. It can be really hard to reconcile those two things.
But one thing is for sure, both of these cases, they really highlight how things can go wrong when it comes to protecting kids.
Without a doubt.
The delayed response with Hassani, CPS not finding Tiana for years.
Yeah, it really makes you question the systems that are supposed to be there to protect vulnerable children. Where did things break down?
Right. That's the big question, isn't it?
When we talk about these systemic failures, it's more than just, one person messing up.
Right.
It's are there enough resources? Are the rules themselves? Are they working? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like a bigger picture problem. So you look at Hassani's case, and one thing that really stands out is how long it took for his disappearance to even be reported to the police.
Right. That's huge. The source material, it doesn't say exactly how long, but any delay, that's bad news.
Oh, absolutely. Time is crucial.
Evidence disappears, memories get fuzzy, and the chances of finding a kid safe, well, they just plummet.
It's terrifying to think about. And it makes you wonder, what were the rules for foster parents in this situation? Were they supposed to report it right away? Did Lewis follow those rules?
Good questions. And with foster kids, there's already another layer of, well, responsibility, right? More people involved, more oversight, maybe.
Yeah, so you'd have to look at how California's foster care system works, right?
Right.
See if something went wrong there, something that could have been prevented.
Exactly. And then there's Tiana, where things just, they seem even more messed up. I mean, CPS looking for her for years and nothing.
It's mind-boggling. You think about communication breakdowns, like was CPS talking to other agencies?
Yeah, and what about within CPS itself? Were there different caseworkers over the years? Did they all have the same information? Was there a real plan to find her?
And even beyond that, you got to think about resources. Like, did they have enough people to do the job right? Enough funding?
Exactly. These caseworkers, they're often totally overwhelmed, tons of cases, maybe not enough support. It's easy for things to get missed, for follow-ups to slip through the cracks.
It's almost like the system is set up to fail these kids. And I mean, this isn't just a California or Washington problem, right? This is everywhere.
It's a national issue, unfortunately. And look, it's easy to point fingers, blame specific people,
Right.
but we have to understand these issues are deep, they're complicated.
So then how do we fix it? What can we do to prevent these tragedies from happening again and again?
Well, I think the first step is we need more transparency, more accountability. When things go wrong, there has to be a thorough investigation.
Yeah, and not just to find someone to blame, but to actually figure out what went wrong so it doesn't happen again.
Right, exactly. What policies need to change? What kind of resources are needed to do the job right?
And it's not just about like national level change, right? People can get involved in their own communities.
Oh, absolutely. Pushing for more funding for these agencies, supporting organizations that work with families, even just volunteering, every little bit helps.
And it starts with awareness,
Ah,
right? Knowing how these systems work, recognizing the signs of abuse, knowing how to report it.
that's huge. And one thing that strikes me, thinking about these two cases is the difference in how much attention they got. Hassani's case, it was all over the news, right? National coverage.
Yeah, Nancy Grace and all that.
Yeah. But Tiana's case, it was basically silent until years later. Do you think that media attention maybe put more pressure on the police with Hassani's case?
I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but you do wonder. Right.
It makes you wonder how many other cases are out there that we never even hear about. How many kids slipping through the cracks without anyone noticing?
It's a chilling thought. Makes you realize we all have to be more vigilant, right? Not just wait for something terrible to happen and then react.
It's about being proactive. And while we're on the topic of things that just don't feel right, in both cases, the people who are supposed to be taking care of these kids, they weren't held criminally responsible.
Yeah, no one really went to jail, even though these kids suffered so much. And that's something a lot of people struggle with.
Oh, absolutely.
It's understandable, right?
Yeah.
You see a kid hurting, and you want someone to pay for it.
Yeah, of course. But the legal system, it's not always that simple. Like prosecutors, they need to have enough solid evidence to actually prove someone's guilty in court.
So, with Hassani, even though the police think it was Lewis, maybe they just didn't have enough proof to convince a jury to, beyond a reasonable doubt.
That's possible, yeah. And with Tiana, as horrible as everything was, maybe what they had pointed to, negligence, but not like intentionally hurting her. And legally, those are different.
It's tough because what feels right, like morally, doesn't always match up with what the law says.
Definitely. It can be a hard thing to wrap your head around.
But okay, so even if someone doesn't go to jail, shouldn't there be some accountability for the system itself? Like if CPS messed up, if they didn't follow the rules.
Oh, absolutely. If there were mistakes, if those kids weren't protected the way they should have been, that has to be addressed.
It's about making sure these agencies are actually doing their jobs, that they're strong enough to protect kids.
Exactly. And that might mean giving them more money, making sure caseworkers are trained better, having someone watching over them to make sure things are done right, maybe even changing the laws themselves to be stronger.
It's a big, messy problem. No easy answers.
No, not at all. But we can't just look away, right? Every kid deserves to be safe.
Absolutely. And it's not just about waiting for the government to fix everything either.
Right. We can all do something.
We have to be aware of what's going on around us, know the signs of abuse, know how to report it if we see something wrong.
And support those groups that are out there working to help kids, too.
It's about all of us taking care of each other, really.
Exactly. Making sure no child falls through the cracks.
So we've covered a lot today, some really heavy stuff. But if there's one thing I want you to take away from all this, it's that you can make a difference. Think about what you can do, even in your own community, to help protect kids. whether it's volunteering, donating, or even just speaking up when you see something that's not right.
Yeah, don't underestimate the power of even small actions.
We all have a responsibility here. So thanks for being here with us today, even though it wasn't the most cheerful topic.
It's important to face these things head on, though, right?
Absolutely. Because if we don't talk about it, how are we going to fix it?